the Wright Stuff when two Ohio brothers shattered the bonds of gravity. "They done it! They done it!" the teenager yelled as he ran down the beach. "Damned if they ain't flew." Although his grammatical ability wasn't in high gear, his good luck was. The winds of fortune would soon blow young Johnny Moore into the history books for no other reason than being there. Just moments before, on the windy, frigid 1903 December day, he had simply been strolling down the beach. Suddenly his mid-morning beach walk was interrupted by the sight of several men clustered around an odd mechanical apparatus. The device, the men informed him, was hopefully going to fly that morning. Always up for excitement, Johnny decided to join the others. Although he didn't expect the huge gadget to fly, since nothing before it had, the situation held the prospect of more excitement than aimlessly wandering the beach. Two brothers, Wilbur and Orville Wright, he learned, had gathered 4 other fellows to assist with their trial flight. The Wrights had nailed a red blanket on the side of their shed to alert the locals that they would like their help. This served as their prearranged signal that they would be testing their flyer. The local folk felt the two brothers from Dayton, Ohio, were a bit on the eccentric side. They were, however, very industrious fellows and had always been polite and appreciative of any assistance. 3 of the men who showed up to help that December 17th morning, John Daniels, Will Doe, and Adam Etheridge, worked at the nearby Kill Devil Hills life-saving station. The 4th, W.C. Brinkley, was an area businessman. Along with young Johnny, they would soon witness an event that would one day be commemorated by their bronze statues standing on the beach, gazing forever skyward. The 5 of them helped the brothers haul the 605-pound canvas, wire, and wood flyer 200 feet across the frozen sand to its long wooden launching track. Knowing any one of their test flights had the potential to make history, they had tossed a coin to decide which one should fly first. Wilbur had actually won the coin toss 3 days previously, but unfortunately, when the flyer left the launching rail, he oversteered with the plane's elevator. The craft climbed too steeply, stalled, and then dove into the sand. It took the next 3 days to repair the plane and get it back into flying condition. Orville positioned himself in the flyer and tested his controls. The stick that controlled the horizontal elevator, which controlled climb and descent, seemed to work just fine. Likewise, the cradle he swung with his hips twisted the warp of the wings just as they had planned. In combination with the movable vertical tail fin, it should let him turn either way as he needed. When he was satisfied, Orville released the restraining wire that held back the straining plane as the 12-horsepower engine fought to push its load forward. At 10:35, the 40-foot wingspan flyer moved down the launching rail as Wilbur steadied its wings. Since Wilbur knew he'd be preoccupied, he had asked John Daniels if he would squeeze the rubber bulb of the camera he had preset to hopefully catch the first seconds of flight. Although Daniels later nervously told the brothers that in his excitement he couldn't remember having squeezed the camera's bulb, he actually had. As the shutter of the box camera snapped open and shut, it forever preserved man's first success in leaving the earth under his own power. Wilbur had instructed the little group not to look too sad and to laugh and holler and clap as Orville came down the ramp. When the huge machine took to the air, his coaching was no longer necessary. The moment lasted for only 12 seconds, but that was all it took to make history. Far from the smooth flight most people likely envision when they look at the historic picture The flyer bucked like a rodeo bull. Orville desperately struggled to avoid his brother's mistake of oversteering. Despite his best efforts, the wind buffeted the machine. During the wild 12-second ride that reached an altitude of about 10 feet, the pioneering plane stayed aloft until it hit the sand with a thud about 120 feet from the end of the rail. Suddenly, the centuries of mankind's crazy dreams of leaving the ground like the birds they envied were no longer wild dreams. The two mild-mannered Ohio brothers had actually cracked nature's code to temporarily release the bonds of gravity. Before the day was over, the Wrights carried out 3 more test flights, each gaining increasingly more ground. The last one, with Wilbur at the controls, lasted nearly a minute and covered 852 feet. There were clearly many challenges left to overcome since, like its predecessors, it also slammed into the sand. The trial flights, though, let the Wright brothers and their little audience know that something very special had just transpired. Unlike young Johnny, who ran off yelling to the wind, the typically composed brothers, following a sedate round of gratitude, congratulations, and handshakes, simply headed off for a quiet meal. Later, they trekked to Kill Devil Hill's life-saving station to once more thank their volunteers and ask to use their telegraph. The telegram to their father simply stated that they had success in their flights and matter-of-factly documented the distances traveled and the seconds they stayed aloft. They followed this brief message with a request for their father to inform the press and their promise to be home for Christmas. As instructed, their proud father informed the press. Oddly, the press was not particularly interested. In fact, their hometown paper, the Dayton Journal, refused to even publish a notice. The flights, in the editor's opinion, were too short to be important. Meanwhile, against the brothers' instructions, the telegraph operator at the life-saving station had leaked the story to a Virginia newspaper. That paper then concocted a highly inaccurate story that was reprinted in several other papers, including the Dayton Journal. The Wrights later issued their own factual press release, but there was actually very little written about the event. It was almost as if the fantastic incident had never even occurred, other than in the memories of the 5 observers and a handful of curious newspaper readers. In fact, it would be some time before they would eventually step into their rightful place in the history of flight. Not only were they quiet and unassuming, but also quite secretive about their invention. Their research had been carried out not in the glare of public scrutiny, but in the solitude of the back room of their Dayton bicycle shop. Some of their contemporaries had repeatedly summoned exciting crowds around them to bear witness to their unfortunate abortive attempts at flight. Conversely, Wilbur and Orville built a wind tunnel in their shop and methodically tested wing angles, propeller slants, rudder control, and a myriad of vital details. Although their experiments were meticulous and measured, the muse that first gave birth to their research dipped, dived, and darted with unrestricted abandon. Before the brothers poured through volumes of aeronautic experimentation and pulled out their slide rules and calipers, they stared for hours at the miraculous flight of birds. They noticed the curvature of the top of their wings and how they changed the angle of the ends of their wings to lean into their turns. Year by year, the blend of those early dreams, their years of patient testing, and their steel-nerve trials led to an incredible December day. That day has been depicted with considerably more elegance but never with more fervor than in young Johnny Moore's on-the-spot analysis. Damned if they ain't flew.